Bravo, Alex. Bravo, Gallia. You guys were amazing. I enjoyed it so, so much. And by the way, for everybody here, you know that at the top right corner, look, I'm going to do it right now. You can go like this, and you'll see the little clapping hands in case you want to join in the applause. We're all applauding for you. This was fantastic, really, both of you. I've heard the piece a number of times because we've been sharing the files, making sure everything worked prior to now, and now I finally get to say it personally. Bravo, Alex! Really, and this composition is, I think it deserves a spot in the cello violin duo canon, and it was beautifully composed, and I get a feeling that Gallia, who also played marvelously, would agree that this was a fun piece. What do you think, Gallia?
Absolutely. I totally
Yeah.
agree with you.
Well, I'm gonna go jump in straight to the Q&A because I got some questions here for you, if that's okay. I'm just gonna go right on it because we're all curious to hear from you. So first, I got a couple of questions here for Alex. I'll go with the first one here. And I guess I touched upon that when I read some of the program notes, but in case there might be some other things. What are some of the influences for A Thousand Cranes? So I know you mentioned already a couple with the folk music and the actual violin and cello duet combination being that's a fun, as a cellist, that must be fun to write for, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, no, I think I'd start with maybe telling a little bit about the creative fellow position, because that's kind of where it began in our conversation almost a little less than a year ago now, of what is the creative fellow going to do, and this fall thinking, what can we do right now? And in some sense, a small chamber piece for two strings seemed to make a lot of sense. And I've personally, at least, and I think AYS, Gallia's experiences, the world right now in terms of music and collaboration is so in this remote assembly model, in terms of playing something in your room and someone else plays something and then you layer them together. And that can be very wonderful. And, our schools are able to continue. We're able to do things like orchestral geometric unity, for example, all at the same time. But that being said, a big inspiration and influence in this piece was the idea, I want to, what can I do that will allow me to be in the room with somebody else? Can I wear a mask safely and with another masked musician do something? And I suppose, yes, a lot of influence came from the repertoire you mentioned. And I always think of this piece, the Handel Halverson Passacaglia, which is a piece for violin and cello based on a Handel G minor. It's a theme of variations, but I think of going to these summer music camps, and if there's a violinist and a cellist, exactly. Yeah,
I love that piece.
Oh, gorgeous. And the idea that I just remember being a young person, and whenever there's a cellist and a violinist, or a violist and a violinist, someone gives the cue and you're into that. So with this, trying to write something fun and festive that could be as accessible and tuneful and catchy as that, albeit with some modernist kind of influence in, harmonics and, these screeches and spectral colors and drumming. And and then folk music, and A Thousand Cranes is a Japanese myth. And I think sometimes the piece references sort of a pentatonic Japanese mode, but it never really is steeped in that. It references, Romanian gypsy modes. I've tried to listen to a lot of folk music, but at the same time not be steeped in any one given tradition. And I think that maybe it's kind of my filtered, folk music. And I think one influence was, go ahead.
So you're like a total Angelino, right? Getting culture references from all over the place, or Californian, I should say that. Yeah. Getting West Coaster, getting influences from all over the place, including, and that's very you in a way.
Sure.
Can I say that?
Well, yeah, no, I would hope. I love that image. But also improvisation and the idea that, Gallia and I talked in rehearsal about this should kind of sound like two people in a pub pull out their instruments, and it's a jam in some sense like that. I mean, there's structure and form, but in a lot of ways it should sound very playful and improvised.
Yeah, I must say that personally, and I have a feeling more than one will agree with me, that the piece has a I mean, I must really congratulate you. It has a lot of the flow that I like a lot about the Ravel duo. I mean, a lot of these duos, but the Ravel's got that thing, and then it kind of goes to the other one, while the other, and it's a sort of where both instruments are constantly switching roles. It's a very democratic piece, and I felt this piece had that too. It's a lot of well, violin playing with the cello supporting, and then switching the roles constantly, and I really like that. So I'm going to give you a question. So if we call this pizzicato, yeah, and we called there are all these strokes, spiccato. What are we going to call this, Alex?
Right.
I love it. We're gonna give it a name.
we should. I would love to do more with that, and I think in a rewrite or for another movement someday, I think giving Gallia more to do in that realm on her instrument. Yeah, turning the cello into a tabla or koto kind of pizzicato energy. I don't know.
Tablato. We should call it tablato, something like that. Here we go. So let me go back to the questions here. Gallia, what was the rehearsal process like for you? And to that I will add like another layer to the question, which is I'm very curious how you process. Let's say, so you've been brainstorming, talking about this with Alex and the whole thing, and so from that point to the point where you get the music, how do you approach it, if it's a chamber work or a duo like that, and then to the actual rehearsing again and getting it together?
Well, just there's so many places to start with this. Most musicians were not trained to approach a piece that has never been recorded or played before. So, playing a piece by a living composer is very difficult because you have to kind of keep your mind open. But the good thing is that I was playing with the composer. So during the rehearsal process,
who wrote it for you?
Yeah, for me. I was able to ask Alex, like, what works here, or what would you like out of this place, or would you want to change that? Like, we ended up changing a bunch of things, which I think made the process even more fun. I'll start by saying when I first got the score, I went, whoa, this looks really difficult. I was really impressed with like how incredibly detailed the score was. And then putting it together in my very small apartment was also another fun experience. But yeah, I genuinely enjoyed it. I had like full freedom to sort of tell my ideas to Alex, and we gave each other feedback and changed a bunch of things, and it was just a really fun experience. And of course, Alex is an incredible composer and musician, and very, very proud of how it turned out.
I also would like to put a highlight and sort of for you guys to describe, because it wasn't just, okay, you get a score, we were gonna, practice part, let's rehearse it and then put it together and people clap. No, I mean, we just saw a whole production, we just saw the video component. I mean, and in this regard, AYS, we sort of, I mean, one thing that I've liked very much about these fellowships is that it really is, at least that's what we're attempting, is to say, Gallia, Alice, we want this, but it's also, here you go, do something with it. and you guys did it. I mean, really, I would say that the vast majority of what was done to make it happen was you guys, right? I mean, finding the engineers, the how to record it. I mean, the logistical side with some support from AYS, obviously, but in the end, a lot of the actual putting it together was you guys, correct?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I'd like to just state my gratitude to AYS for that trust, I suppose, in some sense. It could have turned out a little differently, but and to kind of echo what Gallia said, in the sense that I think that collaborative nature makes the music a lot richer. in the sense that there were, numerous spots probably where, she looked at it and would try it, and it would maybe be awkward, or and she would be able to suggest, knowing her own playing and her instrument, ways to, bring it to life even more. And without that workshop, just sending off the score in parts and calling it a day, I think you lose out on that that synergy. And then I suppose Maestro Izcaray, to your other point of treating it like a production. I would love someday to play it live all the way through. This was very much a little bit of a recording, and then working with Alexa Cha, who was director of photography, and I love that element of it too. And I'm really interested in that going down the road of, you don't see a lot of music video approaches to classical music, and the ability with a close-up, or to kind of tell your listener where to put their ear. I think it really helps bring the piece to life. Especially this is very festive and animated, so to see us playing it is a lot more meaningful, I think, than sending out a WAV file MP3, and people listening to it in their headphones alone.
Well, I also like that by doing this this approach, and it's happened with a number of the things that we've done, like with geometric unity and just basically everything we've done. It's that when you're able to do sort of this classical MTV thing where there's a video of the piece, but the video is very much following the score in a way, because it's done also through your eyes, the eyes of a musician. Yeah. And the way we visualize music, both in the score and just how we listen when we're listening to an orchestra or a duet, we're literally using our sight to follow where our ears guide us. So if the melody goes somewhere, if it's a good piece, we go, oh, there's something happening here. Oh, look at that pizzicato. Oh, look at that. Oh, so a lot of that stuff that I felt that it was accomplished wonderfully in a way that it really guides the music. So really, congratulations for that. Extra that this type of thing, I'm calling it indie classical. This new thing that you mentioned, Alex, and I think Gallia, you also alluded to that, where musicians now creating their own music, putting it together, using some of the same disciplines that are associated with an orchestra, sort of, and everything. Also, this was put together quite quickly, correct? I mean, from the point where we said, how long would you say was from the idea of the piece until now?
I think that I got the green light from you, Maestro Izcaray, and AYS to write the piece in August. And to speak for my process of it, it was really quick, in the sense that it kind of came in 3 or 4 weeks, the first pass. And usually I tend to be a little more thoughtful and meticulous in planning a form, and kind of sketching. This was kind of more bar one, chugging along and then stopping at the double bar. And I'd say that Gallia and I met maybe 3 to 4 times over the course of September through November, distanced and masked at her home. And then we recorded audio in early December, video in mid-December, and had the video sent and shipped away by the new year. So all in all, about 5 months, but little bits at a time.
That's excellent. So Gallia, of the fellowships that have been created since I became music director, you were the first one, the Concertmaster Fellowship. And I remember that when they were asking us, what's that about? And I was like, well, the Concertmaster of an orchestra there's so much, well, the name says it all, really, Concertmaster. And it really, to me, becomes, at least I'm the kind of music director, conductor who really likes to sort of, in a way, delegate, but to connect. I depend a lot on the Concertmaster and their support and all that stuff. So, but that sort of is the classical role of the Concertmaster. But nowadays, when things are turning more outward, and not just in music, but in all walks of life, since the beginning of that fellowship, I have seen a beautiful evolution. I remember when you first starting to do some of your, Gallia has a fantastic Instagram account that I recommend everybody to visit. It's so entertaining, didactical, but also very, I must say, if I may say so, very human. You're just showing yourself what you do, your process, very generous. But I mentioned this because in a way I've kind of seen some sort of, I mean, you've been evolving that in a, in sort of creating your virtual avatar, let's call it, your presence, right? Your little corner.
Sure.
But I think, would you say, I'm curious, would you say that some of those experiences helped with this particular process? Because I know that a lot of the ideas to how to get something, when you guys were talking about how to get the recording done, and what if we do this in steps, we record here and then do the video like that, and this, I mean, a lot of that, and I'm aware, I was told that a lot of that came from you. So I'm curious to hear from you a little bit about this virtual reality, and you have some years now ahead of some of your peers with embracing this, including the music making through the medium.
Yeah. I'll start by saying that the Instagram account Maestro speaks of was an accident. A few years ago, I just, out of a whim, I recorded the opening of the Sibelius Violin Concerto that I actually ended up performing with AYS a year ago. And just overnight, 10,000 views. And from there, just every video that I ever posted was just up and up and up. But yeah, I've had a bit of experience in recording, putting things together, editing, and being comfortable and learning how to record well and efficiently. And I think that the way that Alex and I approached this was almost very similar to how I record my own kind of material. Like I do things for YouTube and I do things for Instagram. I started streaming live on Twitch, where you can watch me practice live. And one of the most important things is to plan the way that you record things so that you don't fall over dead by the end of it. Like, musicians are prone to sort of going the extra mile and forgetting that we ourselves are sort of human beings that can break. And so Alex and I, right off the bat, were sort of like, in the last couple rehearsals, Alex, I think we sort of went through, okay, we're going to record A to B, and then B to D1/2, and D to, F or whatever. And that was really helpful because, the way that the piece was also written allowed us to do that, which is also another thing that a lot of pieces don't have. They don't have clear markers. So sometimes you do actually have to plan, like, okay, well, for an hour I will record this part, and then an hour I'll record this part. But luckily Alex wrote it in a way that we were able to record it very cleanly. And so right off the bat, like when we got to the recording studio, we said, okay, A to B, let's just get like 4 or 5 takes of this. Okay, good. 5, and B to C or C1/2. We'll get 5 takes of this, and then we'll pick the best one. And that's really how it's done on the internet as well. When I'm recording for Instagram videos, if I'm recording a little snippet of my practice, sometimes I just leave the camera or I leave the phone on for an extended period of time, probably like once I even let it on for like 3 hours, just to pick 10 or 30 seconds or 45 seconds out of 3 hours is a lot of work. But it also shows that we work so hard that it's better to be efficient than to just sort of go for it and then hope for the best. So yeah, the recording process was, of course, was so easy because Alex is an incredible musician and wrote this piece so well. But it was almost easy to kind of go in, play a very difficult piece, but efficiently and well. And we even finished early, I think, on the studio day. Like, we had like an extra 30 minutes just to listen and hear some of this stuff. And it was great. And yeah.
Well, this is where perhaps maybe some of the skills that are inherent of a classical musician, especially an orchestral musician, because we're against the clock during the rehearsals, there's a limit of hours or rehearsals one can have. Things have to be done, sight read, and put together quite quickly, right? So it's advantageous to marry those two worlds, right? And the sort of the technological high-tech part, and just what we already know from classical musicians, and then you're able to do things quickly. That's wonderful. From the audience here, I have a question. How do Alex and Gallia think the use of technology in music over the past year will continue and influence live concerts going forward? So it's a related question. Want to go first, Alex? Maybe.
Yeah, I just had a thought that I hope a lot of what we've learned we can do now remains, and I don't think any of this was all that new, but we kind of figured out how to do it quickly in the sense that musicians can record remotely in their homes now. So perhaps not for live concerts, but these musicians across the country that have developed the skill set in engineering their bedroom, now that there's an extra income stream for them, to record for somebody internationally, say for media or any sort of recording project. Similarly, this piece, for example, there might be some of us in the room right now that aren't in Los Angeles. I'm sure that our audience here is across the United States or international. In some sense, our audience,
One right.
Alabama, yeah. So it's encouraging to think that perhaps as Gallia has built and how AYS could, and all of us, you can reach an audience beyond your geography. Similarly, you might be able to collaborate with musicians beyond your geography. I hope that remains in just reaching an audience. And I do think, though, that this, for me particularly, was so meaningful because it meant playing with someone. And I think playing for an audience has a certain kinetic energy that I don't think we will lose. I really don't think that will go away, and it'll come back slowly, however it does. And hopefully we just have these extra tools of reaching all sorts of people.
Yeah, I fully 100% agree with that. There's nothing better than playing for a live audience. There's this sort of energy that, like he said, atmosphere that musicians are able to give an audience member that you simply won't get from a screen. And while the past year has been very difficult for musicians, we've all learned an incredible amount of skills and technology and all these products that honestly we all needed before this time. And because of this year, we were able to learn about them, spend the time, learn how to record ourselves well, of course, change the way our homes look to record well, working with musicians across the globe and things like that. And, with the rise of social media, that's really how young people are engaging with classical music these days. It's the rise of Instagram and Facebook and Twitter and being able to share and show what younger musicians have to offer inspires those young people to come to the audience and come to the concert hall to hear that energy, to hear that amazingness that we can bring to the table. So yeah, with all of this going on, a lot of good has actually come out of it, but nothing will ever beat playing in Royce Hall. Nothing will ever beat that.
Completely agreed. And in fact, I hadn't heard any live music, anything. I was also kind of in that world of technology and learning production and stuff during this time. And it was actually going to LA and hearing your peers of the percussion group of this piece that I composed for the fall concert. When I heard them, I realized I hadn't heard live music in months. And it was the most beautiful, I can't even describe, it was the sweetest sensation that had returned like a ghost that I forgot about. And then all of a sudden, it was beautiful. Here's the question, because it's related to that. Do you think the pandemic in some way has introduced new fans to classical music who otherwise would not listen to classical music, especially due to virtual performances? So like new points of contact. Has this been a positive megaphone for us in a way? What do you think?
I think so. I think that since lockdown has been in state, most people have been scrolling on their phones all day. We've had tons of time to sort of sit on the couch and scroll and look at social media and go to the internet and look at YouTube. And yeah, I've definitely seen an uptick in my stats and in my analytics. I've seen lots of younger faces, lots of younger age groups watching my content and
they're not all classical musicians, right?
Not all. No, a lot of them are not musicians at all, or just they're in jazz, or they're from all genres, and people are just genuinely interested now that they're finding new hobbies and they're trying to do new things. Like I actually have a couple of new students who are just starting to learn that are much older, and yeah, I think that the pandemic has definitely opened up everybody to new possibilities and new genres and new hobbies. I don't know how that'll last throughout, after this, hopefully soon. But I have noticed, at least in my analytics on like Instagram and YouTube, that I have seen a younger audience approaching my material.
That's amazing. That's very great to hear. Well, Alex, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think that I'm part of me feels, at some level, people might be at home and looking for more things to do. So they might be playing more, learning an instrument, for example, or more time scrolling, which means that there's more opportunity to be exposed to things. But I also think that, at least maybe I've noticed that more musicians are creating more, in the sense of, I see a lot of musicians, maybe take a fictional musician who I might have only known to be a classical orchestral players, and now I see them looping or recording multi-track versions of themselves. And I think, Maestro Izcaray, you've spoken to me about this quite a lot, and you're an example of this kind of 21st century Renaissance musician, in the sense of musicians that compose, play, improvise, and
I'm calling it indie classical.
Yeah, that
indie classical. There you go.
And I wonder if just being in lockdown has encouraged musicians to explore within their own musicality a little more, with things being a little slow. That being said, I don't know, the concert hall is such a wonderful place to go. It's so interesting. It's in some ways a museum, right? Because we witness the music of the past, and we marvel at that, and we listen to that, and we share that. But it is also this, stomping ground for new work. And I think maybe going forward for, for orchestras to capture, the public again, and I'm sure there will be a rush to the concert halls, is continuing both trajectories, playing hits, playing new music, playing, this just kind of exciting opportunity to revitalize a love for, classical music, whatever that means, acoustic instruments in a setting together, making music.
Well, I can say that I'm very impressed with your answers. I completely agree, and it inspires me. I have one last question for you guys. It's what goals do you have for 2021, musically, professionally, and if you want to add some personal stuff too as well, they're more than welcome. But I'm curious about your perspective and about this year that we just began.
Sure, I'll go first.
How about Gallia? There you go. Since you're unmuted.
I'll go first. By the end of 2020, I was a little bit worried about how things were going to pan out, just because I'm actually finishing up my master's degree, and it's the worst time to be in the last year of your master's degree, because you don't really know what the next few steps might be.
Yeah.
But luckily, my school, the Colburn School of Music, was so generous and offered everyone an extension year. So I'm actually able to finish my master's degree for another year, finishing up my big recital project that basically gives me my master's in the spring of 22. So really the plan for me in 21 is just like try to relax and be busy as I possibly can be with my online presence. And if orchestras start to open up the idea of auditions, which was something I literally was just about to do, and then the pandemic hit, then also approaching that and starting to prepare for those kinds of positions in major symphonies. But yeah, just to finish up my degree, get all of my academics done, just get it done, and work on my online presence, work with whatever I can in the area with AYS, with Colburn, people like Alex, and a couple quartets that I've been luckily been able to do, and hunker down and wait, and just kind of be hopeful that the world will sort of go back to somewhat of a normal soon, and to prepare for the next few steps in my professional career.
Alex, no pressure after that answer.
Yeah,
what are your plans?
What she said, I'm going to do that too. No, I think, I'm in a similar boat as Gallia, in the sense that I go to USC and I'm finishing my degree in May. So, on a kind of personal study note, one of my New Year's resolutions was to listen to a symphony a day. So that might be an interesting project. 365 symphonies later. That is to say, very interested in studying orchestration very seriously this last semester. I'm hoping to graduate it and make a living in addition to, concert writing and my own film scoring projects, but to, to orchestrate, be an orchestrator for others, to be an assistant, and playing as much as I can. So I think it will be a bit improvised in seeing what the world looks like. I feel like every week brings us new updates and information, but trying to take advantage of this time to be productive and study and practice and then hit the ground running.
Well, I know I said last question, but just because the last thing, this is a very short one. The great Janos Starker, cellist and pedagogue, used to say, I cannot play without teaching and I cannot teach without playing. Those two very important parts of his identity. Now you got piano, cello, composition of concert music, film music, and now we got this new production indie classical thing going. Is it kind of like that for you, but all those five things, like whatever, as equally important? Because you take the cello seriously. You're a legit cellist. You're very legit. You're a legit jazz pianist, and I'm very, very confident about your composition and both. We're rooting for you in both fields that you mentioned. So, but there are.
Yeah. Well,
they're your babies, right? They're all the same.
It's so flattering that you said that, and I appreciate that. But they are, and I find that I get sad when one is neglected for too long. I think the result is sometimes this juggling act and maintaining at times, a good kind of playing, and I see this in AYS, especially when you play with someone like Gallia, and I feel sometimes the difference. And it's wonderful to play with musicians who help you get there.
Your level goes up when you're playing.
Yeah. I think for me, for my musical goals and interests, it's really helpful to do a lot of things and to do that juggling act. And I find if I play well, I compose better. If I am writing, I'm thinking differently about the music that we approach in our ensemble and so on. But at times it can be a little bit frightening, and you do think, am I being a jack of all trades, master of none kind of trajectory? But you gotta try.
Well, Mozart did it, and others have in the past too. So no pressure there, Alex. But the including the improvising. Well, with that, I'm just fascinated by what you guys are doing. I'm very happy also to Tara Esquivel, to the AYS team and the board for allowing me and us to think within our great tradition a little bit outside the box, so these fellowships can be created, and so that we can see where you guys are going to take us in the future. This has been marvelous, really enjoyable. As a chamber musician at heart, I love the piece, I love the performance, and as your music director, I couldn't be more proud. Bravo to both of you. It's been a real pleasure, and I can't wait to make music again, hopefully in the nearest future.
Thank you, Maestro.
Thank you all for being here.